Hi, Tamsin here from Babbling Books, and I am so excited to be sharing with you my illustrated journal that I kept while I was in Bali for 10 days recently. I have filmed lots of flip throughs in the past of different trips that I have been on. You might have seen some of them from Japan or my trips to Europe. This is going to follow a very similar format. I'm going to take you through page by page all of the sections of my journal, which is all illustrated this time, which is quite different to some of the other collage journals which I've put together before. This particular notebook is a Lamy brand notebook, which was gifted to me. So to start off, let's dive into looking at each of the pages of my journal. So unlike my other journals, I kept a sketch journal for this trip. The only section of collage is this front page. Just kind of giving an overview of the trip and including a little pocket with my media pass that I had throughout the trip. I attended the Ubud Writers and Readers Festival in Bali, which was the main reason for me going on my trip, but I also did some other things while I was there, as you will see. So I started off on the first day of the trip with a little bit of a timeline of my day, what I had for breakfast, some of my luggage that I was packing and taking, and my flight details. So I was really testing out on this page the different sort of styles of sketch journaling that I could do, and also testing out my watercolors. Our first day was so much fun. It was really hard to adjust to the heat, but I definitely was drinking lots of lovely fruit juices and iced teas and drinks. We explored Ubud, saw one of these little creatures which is called a luwak, which was really fun, and saw a very kind of broken down looking tuk-tuk. There aren't really any tuk-tuks in Bali, but it was kind of fun to see one out the front of a cafe. I also decided to keep a record of what I was reading throughout my trip, so there's some book reviews. This was the first book that I read on the trip, Early Riser by Jasper Fforde, and I really enjoyed this. I listened to it as an audiobook. Then playing again with different composition of the page. This is kind of my day, working its way around clockwise, different things that we did for the day. It was really relaxing. Once again, very hot. I started recording the weather at the top of the page and then realized that the weather was pretty much the same every day, so you will see this come and go throughout the pages. Once again, another book review. This time this was an ebook, Normal People by Sally Rowney, which I also really enjoyed. Once again, playing with composition, I really wanted to test out how I could style these pages and challenge myself to paint and draw and really discover what was possible with the things that I had packed and the supplies that I'd taken with me. I'm really happy with this page. Now the book review, I was reading a lot at the very beginning of this trip, so this time it was The Surprising Power of a Good Dumpling by Y. Chim, and this was an ebook. I absolutely loved this book, and I think it was probably my favorite book that I read during this trip. I'm a big fan of this page. There's something about it, just the color scheme really works, and it's a really nice memory. This table with a table runner which was beside the pool, and I spent the afternoon reading, plenty of sunscreen and my sunglasses on. So yeah, really nice memories from this day. And then the festival started to begin. So as I was attending as a media representative, I went along to the press call, which is a pre-festival event briefing different media representatives about some of the key artists who are going to be appearing at the festival, but also the themes of the festival. And the theme for the 2019 festival was karma. So I decided a little bit of a creative way of recording my day was the different drinks that I had. So what they were, where we were when we had them, and kind of roughly what we were doing. It's just an interesting way of keeping track of the day in a slightly different visual way. And I found in the heat, I really was drinking lots of different kinds of drinks all day. On the 24th, the festival started in earnest, and I kept detailed notes of each of the sessions that I attended. I won't really explain too much about what each of these are, but this was the first session, The Price of Democracy, which was all about some of the challenges to democracy in Indonesia. The next session I went to was Islam Today, which had a really wide variety of speakers from around the world, talking about some of the challenges and opportunities experienced by the Islamic community. And Location was one of my favorites. This was talking about writing about place in fiction from lots of really different perspectives, and I really enjoyed it. I really love a book that has a strong sense of place within it. And then next up was the Hijab Files. I enjoyed this session. It was really interesting to hear about how different authors from different parts of the world, from Indonesia, from Canada, and from Australia, have written about characters that wear hijab in their work. And this was kind of my summary of the day of the 24th, the first day of the festival, and I drew the contents of my backpack. This backpack, was absolutely essential to me to get through the festival, and just some of the things that I couldn't go without. So that includes actually this journal that I'm flicking through now, and various other little bits and pieces. The next day of the festival was straight back into more sessions. First up was Is All Contemporary Fiction Speculative Fiction? This was such a great session, so really interesting. I'm a huge fan of speculative fiction and all kinds of sci-fi, so I really enjoyed this. And I had the opportunity to interview one of the speakers, Claire G. Coleman. You can check out my interview with her on my Instagram. And then I went to a session in the evening, Sour Heart, with Jenny Zhang. It wasn't the first time I've heard Jenny speak, and I really enjoyed hearing a different perspective on her short story collection, Sour Heart, which I really enjoyed. I also read Love Spelled in Poetry by Helena Natasha, which is a poetry collection, and it was really good. So Friday, the 25th of October, I got the opportunity to do a cultural workshop as part of Ubud Writers and Readers Festival, and it was a batik painting workshop, and this design here is what I painted onto fabric using the batik process. First session on the 26th was Language Life Support, talking about Indigenous languages in particular, but some other minority languages and the challenges facing those languages in a globalized world. Then another favourite session, Domestic Spaces, which was hosted by Astrid Edwards. This session is actually available to listen to as a podcast on Astrid's podcast, which is called The Garret. I'll put a link to it in the description box below. Then I went to Rewriting the Classics, which was really fun, really interesting to hear very different perspectives on rewriting two very different classics. And On Travel with Tony Wheeler and Fiona Wright. This was a really indulgent session, all about the joy of travel. And I loved listening to Tony, one of the founders of Lonely Planet, all about his experiences of travel around the world over the years. I also wanted to keep track of some of the books that I purchased during my trip. So this is just a little summary of where I purchased them from, how much they cost, the name of the book and the author. One of my favorite pages, I decided to keep track of the 26th of October by illustrating the three main meals that I had for the day, starting off with matcha swirl pancakes, masala dosa for lunch, and some spaghetti with tomato sauce for dinner. It was a really fun challenge to try and draw food, which is not something I have much experience with. And the final day of my trip, the first session I went to was Reading in the Age of Instagram, which was a really interesting session, all about how reading has changed and our interactions with reading has changed in the age of social media. And the final session that I saw for the festival was Take Up Space. This was an absolutely excellent session, and probably my favorite session of the entire festival, talking about activism through art, humor, the politicization of existence and people's chosen families. It was about being a woman in the world and taking up space in lots of different ways, and I just found it so fascinating, and I feel like I really learned a lot. And so this is my final page for the festival. I illustrated the festival's key art for the year, which was this really fascinating kind of drawing that I really loved. And that kind of wraps up my entire experience of the Ubud Writers and Readers Festival, which was wonderful, and of my time in Bali, which I really enjoyed, and I hope that I'll get the opportunity to go back one day.
And that's it for me. That is my journal for my 10-day trip to Bali in 2019. I hope that you enjoyed it. I hope that you found it interesting to see a slightly different style of journal from me. If you'd like to check out some of my other journaling related videos, I will put a link in the description box below to the journaling playlist. Otherwise, you can keep up to date by following me on Instagram or checking out my blog, babblingbooks.com.au. And I will see you next time.